From Fox 8, this is breaking news.
Good evening, I'm Liz Reyes.
And I'm Lee Zurich. Breaking right now, a federal court in Florida indicts former President Donald Trump for his handling of classified documents after leaving the White House.
The former president on the Truth Social platform says he is summoned to appear in court in Miami next Tuesday. Madeline Rivera has more.
I'm an innocent man. I'm an innocent person.
Former President Donald Trump says he's been indicted again, but this time on federal charges in connection to his retention of classified documents while out of office. This is the first federal indictment of a former president.
This is warfare for the law.
The decision comes after a months-long investigation led by a special counsel appointed by Attorney General Merrick Garland. Trump's facing at least 7 counts related to document handling and obstruction of justice.
This is something that for me was expected, but is nevertheless in a whole bunch of ways really kind of breathtaking.
The FBI raided Trump's Mar-a-Lago home in Palm Beach, Florida last summer. Agents found hundreds of documents marked classified.
It was a rush to get him indicted. You know, you look at the other cases, compare this to Hunter Biden's case, Joe Biden's case, Vice President Pence's.
Despite the legal controversies, Trump is still the 2024 Republican frontrunner, and he could be up against President Joe Biden again, whose administration is trying to convict Trump. Other Republican candidates already in the race are throwing Trump's support amid the indictment. His former running mate Mike Pence, now his competition in a growing GOP field, says an indictment is unfitting.
I think it would send a terrible message to the wider world.
Trump faces a criminal case in New York City and another investigation out of Georgia over potential election interference. The former president has been ordered to appear in federal court in Miami Tuesday. President Biden is also under investigation for his handling of classified documents. In Washington, Madeline Rivera, Fox News.